Hello and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald. Martin Luther, famous church reformer and one of the most consequential figures in European history, challenged the religious and political power structures of his day and ended up transforming Christianity and European life in the Middle Ages. This year, a group of students from Appalachian State University traveled to Germany during spring break to walk in the steps of this famous reformer. My guests today, Stacey, Troisi, and Erin Darnell are here to share some of the highlights of that trip. Welcome, Stacey and Erin. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so why don't you start just by introducing yourselves. Stacey, you can begin and just tell us what you're doing here, and then we'll talk about your trip some.
All right. Well, I am Stacey Troisi. I'm the deacon and campus minister at Grace Lutheran Church, and I work with the wonderful students of Appalachian State. We have a group active of about 25 average each Wednesday night who come and they worship with us on Sunday mornings, and they are a big part of our congregation. My job is really to create a safe and welcoming and affirming environment for our student leaders to come and live out their faith lives and to walk alongside them and watch them serve and see them grow. And I think that right now we just have an incredible group of college students, and I am very hopeful for the life of the church with the students we have right now.
That's great. And I take it, Erin, you're one of those students.
I am.
Stacey's talking about. So what's your role? And is it the Lutheran Student Association?
It's Lutheran Students of Appalachian. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got it close
Yeah,
there.
so I'm the president. I'm a senior here at App studying biology, and I've been a member of LSA, is what we call it for short, since my freshman year. And it's just been a really amazing community for me to be a part of, and I just love welcoming new people in. And so this year I've had the privilege of being the president, and so that's been a great leadership opportunity for me.
So when your family sent you off to college, did they tell you to go straight to the Lutheran Church and find the student association here?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
but I did grow up Lutheran. A lot of my friends from camp and youth group went to App, and they ended up going to LSA, and so I decided to go there as well and found my community there and
Good.
my home. So
Yeah, I'm really interested in the phenomenon of campus ministry. You know, I teach in the philosophy and religion department. Of course, not all of our students are religious, but many of them are, and many of them end up in the various groups on campus. So, Stacey, can you tell us just a little bit about some of the challenges, maybe, of being a campus minister? I would think that it could potentially be incredibly rewarding, but my goodness, you must have some really challenging times as well.
I think mostly I have rewarding. I'm very grateful for this call to ministry. We do have students who have never been away from home, and especially with the pandemic, a lot of them ended high school away from friends, not in the classroom. But I think one of the bigger challenges that we're seeing nowadays is anxiety levels have risen, and challenging part of my job is that I'm not professionally trained to do that, so all I can do is love them, and that's what I try and do and help them out in that way. But it's hard because they're experiencing college in a completely different way than I experienced college.
Right.
And I give them so much credit, and I am in awe every day of our leaders because they fight through the challenges that they're given, be classroom or anxiety or friendships, and they show up every week and they genuinely care about our campus ministry program. And I would be lying if I said I went to campus ministry as a college student. I went a couple times and it wasn't a fit for me. I was in a sorority at a small school, and I live out each week being so grateful that these students choose to be a part of each other's lives. And it really does fill me up to be around them and to see that they are actively making a choice to show up to worship on Sunday morning. They come every Wednesday night, they cook dinner, they go purchase the groceries, and then they prepare the meal for the students and serve it. And anytime that the church needs someone to read or to be assisting minister or to help with a member of the congregation who needs a ride or something repaired, our students never hesitate to agree to help out. And I'm not sure if everyone has the privilege of encountering college students in the capacity that I do, because a lot of college students, I think, get a bad rap. And especially with Appalachian State taking over Boone, I know there are a lot of mixed feelings about that. But I wish everyone could meet the students that we have, because they love each other like brothers and sisters. They fight like brothers and sisters, and they make up like brothers and sisters. Yeah. And I think that's just a great example of what it means to be a great Christian and a great human. And again, I'm just so proud of them.
Well, of course, I interact with students quite differently than you do, but I have noticed, I think, that anxiety levels have risen probably since the pandemic. I'm sure that has something to do with it, and now we're trying to get beyond that, but the anxiety doesn't seem to be going away. So, and it would be worth mentioning that our campus, of course, has counseling services that are available and free to students as well. But Erin, I'm really interested. You said this was the community you plugged into, and obviously you stuck with it for 4 years, and now you're a leader. So it must have given back something to you that kept bringing you back to the Lutheran students.
Absolutely. I've just felt that this community is such a welcoming and affirming community. I feel like sometimes it can be hard to find your place in a big university like App State. And for me, just seeing how welcoming everybody is, anytime someone comes in, they are welcomed with open arms, and they are affirmed and they are loved. And I don't know if a lot of people find that everywhere. And so I feel like that was one of the main drawing points for me. And then from there, you really get sucked into the community. And once you're in, and everybody is like such good friends, like you said, like brothers and sisters. Like we get along so well, and it's really amazing to see people come in, maybe never have experiencing that type of community before, and then they find it with LSA, and it becomes one of the highlights of their college careers.
So speaking of highlights of college careers, I mean, most students look forward to spring break, right?
Absolutely.
Professors do too. But usually, I mean, my students are working on their TANs to go to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or somewhere, but you chose this trip to Germany, which was all about German history, but with a specific focus on your Lutheran heritage. Martin Luther was German, and the German Reformation, of course, brought us Lutheranism. So any regrets about making that choice?
Absolutely not. It was really amazing. I mean, growing up Lutheran, hearing all the stories and hearing the history and everything, that was amazing to see the places there. But I mean, we also have students that aren't Lutheran that are involved in LSA, and just being able to see the history and seeing a place where history took place and the world changed was really amazing. And also just traveling to another country is spectacular as well. Some of our students have never had the opportunity. I've never really traveled internationally.
So this was your first international trip?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and some of our students hadn't even been on a plane before. So it was definitely a great experience in that way, and just the history and just the community building that we did there as well.
So Stacey, were you the group mom? You were helping take care. How many students did you have, by the way?
We took 19 students.
Okay.
19 students who worked very hard over the last 3 years, especially this year. Thank you, Chapel Hill, with football parking. So we park at all the football games. We have cars come to our church lots, and they raise money, and they say, we're going to Germany this year. And
so that's how you funded the trip?
That's how we funded the trip. And they did such a great job. The students actually paid less than the total cost of their flight for their entire trip.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you've got some pictures here, so maybe we can get some of these pictures up and just talk about them.
We had the opportunity to stay in a castle for a couple nights, and so that was absolutely amazing. I've always wanted to go to Germany, so the castles were a big thing for me. So that was probably one of my favorite moments. But also, there's just a lot of little moments, just being able to build community in another place, and just getting closer together as a group. That was amazing as well. So lots of little moments, but also staying in castles is really cool too.
Sounds like fun. So what are we looking at here? That must be a statue of Martin Luther, I would take it.
Yeah.
We're very tired. It's our first night in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Walked around Berlin all day after we flew in, and
this is probably after about 48 hours of traveling.
Yeah. This is just a small part of our group, but we were headed down into Wittenberg to enjoy some dinner. So this is
in Wittenberg.
This is in the square. Yes.
Okay. Is this part of the university behind you, or is that just a civic building?
I think it's just a civic building, but just down the street, just a block down, is the university. So.
Okay. So just to provide a little context for some viewers who may not know as much about Lutheranism, Wittenberg is where Martin Luther went to teach. He was at the university in Wittenberg when he encountered a priest who was selling indulgences. And at this point, Luther was Catholic, right? He's an Augustinian monk and a professor at a Catholic university. And this is where he wrote his complaints about the selling of indulgences and other problems he saw, abuses in the church. And of course, we get the famous story of posting the 95 Theses on the church door in Wittenberg. So it's great. I just point out this handsome guy on the far right here. He is the pastor of your church and your husband, right? So we might talk about the challenges of ministering together later. Is this the church store at Wittenberg? The famous store?
This is the famous store, the
Okay,
95
all right.
PC store.
This is a replica. They've now made it more stable and secure than it used to be. But this would have been where that door was in this in this archway here. So again, the legend is that Luther wrote up these 95 complaints, nailed them to the church door, and that lit the fire of Reformation across Europe. He probably mailed them out too, I think, and of course one of those happy accidents of history, the printing press was recently available, and I've heard that within 2 weeks the theses had been mailed out all over Europe. So how did it feel to stand there knowing the importance of that site?
It was amazing. It was from both like a historical and as growing up Lutheran, always hearing about it. It was surreal, honestly, to be able to see exactly like where he stood and where he changed history.
Mm-hmm. This was our first full day in Germany, and you'll see that we have a lot more people in this picture. We actually traveled with the University of Chapel Hill and their Lutheran campus ministry.
Okay.
And then the University of Northern Florida, they have an interfaith campus ministry that's primarily Lutheran and Episcopalian based, but it's now an interfaith ministry. Mm-hmm. So we have 58 people in total, 21 from Appalachian State. But it was really cool because this was the first time that we had all seen each other as a group.
Oh, it's an impressive group there.
Right.
Where are we here?
This is Eisleben.
Okay. Tell us about Eisleben.
So Eisleben is where Martin Luther was born and died, and so we got to visit the different museums dedicated to that, and we got to hear a little bit about his family history and his parents and what they did, and we got to explore the town as well, which was really, really cool.
So I've always been told that Luther had a very stern father, and that his father was not at all happy with his choice to enter the priesthood and publicly disowned his son. And that was a kind of traumatic event for Luther that may have shaped the way he viewed God. Is that something they told you on your trip here? Is that an accurate reading of the history?
Yeah, we heard a little bit about that. They told us a lot about their reconciliation and how his father came to their wedding, and but yeah, they did talk about his struggle with that and how that contributed to his thinkings and teachings. So.
Great. Yeah, you were telling me about this church. This is this in Eisleben?
This is in Eisleben. This is where Martin Luther was baptized. I think it's Church of Peter and Paul. And you'll see here we have a student, and again, that's my cute husband there, the pastor.
Yeah.
And we are just remembering our baptisms. And as a Lutheran, we believe in one baptism.
Right.
But we do remember our baptisms as often as we can. And so this was a really cool opportunity for us to remember our baptisms in the place where Martin Luther was baptized.
That is pretty
himself.
neat.
Yeah.
So when you remember your baptism, you actually go through the process of anointing with water or oil, or is it an internal kind of introspective thing?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
A lot of times they'll go around with palm branches and we'll remember our baptism. Just anytime we encounter water, it's a good reminder to remember the free gift that God has given us.
Yeah. Now you were telling me that this baptismal font would not have been there in Luther's day, that it would probably been more toward what would be the back
Right.
of what we're looking at now.
It's
right?
back behind us. This was done recently. They went through and renovated the church and stabilized it, and this was part of that.
This is where you stayed here, or this
Yes,
right? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
This is a YMCA camp in Mansfeld, Germany.
It looks like no YMCA camp I've ever
No,
been.
it was a dream. It was a dream, and the family who lived in this castle gave it away. So the YMCA, they use it to share their history and their rich heritage, and it's just a really cool experience. But it's in Mansfeld where Martin Luther grew up,
Okay.
and so we like to think that this angle is what he looked at as a young boy, looking up at the castle.
Wow. You really did travel in his steps, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Did.
From birth to death. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Here's your group again, and where is this?
This is Mansfeld Castle.
Okay, so this is-
beautiful trash can and all.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well,
But we were getting ready to head into dinner, and our group had been able to explore the town and the castle that day.
yeah. Are you in this group, Erin? I'm looking.
Yeah,
for-
I'm peeking out a little bit in the back, but
Okay, I see you now. Yeah, right. Is this this is one of the castles you were talking about when you said that it was a highlight for you to be able to.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is in the chapel that's built within the castle,
Okay.
and we had the opportunity to worship there, which was really amazing. And the acoustics were fantastic in there. So we sang "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God," which is written by.
That was written by Martin Luther, right? Yeah.
We sang that a lot on the trip.
That's got to be one of the most famous hymns in Christendom, and Luther was the author. He was a multi-talented person, right, and a courageous person, really, to stand up to Crown and Pope both. Now, would this predated the Reformation? So would this have been a Catholic chapel prior to the Reformation, or do you know?
I don't know,
Okay.
actually.
I believe it was probably Catholic, but it was also the family's personal chapel, so that they could
Okay.
worship whenever they wanted to.
I got you.
And so it's pretty small. There's only a few seats along the sides. Yeah, so I think it was mostly personal.
Okay. Let's see I like the colors there. Let's see what we have next.
So this is outside of the Wartburg Castle, which is where Martin Luther hid out and translated the New Testament into German. And so we all got to explore the castle, and we got to see the room where he translated, and that was amazing as well. So.
This is one of my favorite sites associated with Luther, because this was after he had been called to Worms, right? And he was asked to recant, and he refused. He stood up to, again, the emperor and the pope. The pope wasn't there, but the emperor was. And even though he had been promised safe passage, I think he had a price on his head when he left, and his Prince Frederick essentially kidnapped him,
Right.
took him back here, disguised him, hid him out. And as you said, Erin, he translated the New Testament into German, which was a major act because the Catholic Church only allowed the Latin Vulgate at the time. So this was a moment when the tradition became more democratized. The Bible would have been available in the vernacular to people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, do you have a picture of the room? Or no, you couldn't take pictures. So the room you visited, though, right?
Yes.
And I asked you if the famous ink spot was on the wall, and that we got a little bit of ambiguity there, right?
I personally did not see it,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean it wasn't there.
So the ink spot, and Erin, tell me if this is right. Apparently, while Luther was in hiding, I don't know what was going on with him, but he said he was tormented by the devil, saw a vision of the devil, picked up the ink well and threw it at the devil, and it splattered on the wall behind. And supposedly, you're still supposed to be able to see the ink spot. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. I didn't see it either, but they did have some of like the original furniture and stuff, so that was cool.
That's neat.
Yeah.
I've heard that sometimes the folks who keep the museum there will go and renew the ink spots. I doubt there's any original ink left, but that's a neat place. All right, what else we have here?
Yes, this is the Augustinian monastery, and this is where Luther went to study. And this is Tyler Ruddy. He is our VP of spiritual life for our group, and he was reading the prayers of the people right where Martin Luther prayed. And I'll say I read the gospel, and it was really cool to stand up.
So you got to read there, and this would have been where Luther read. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
I do not have photographic evidence, but
That's okay. I will take your word for it. So this is the Augustinian monastery, and he was an Augustinian monk before he became a professor.
Right.
Correct.
yes.
And I've read that his supervisor, his confessor, was so worried about Luther because he would go to confession a lot. So he advised him to continue his studies and become a professor so he wouldn't have so much time to think about it. Right? He was so introspective with his life. Well, that's a great shot. So what's next here? Let's see. You got some great photographs. So we're out of Luther territory at this point, right?
So we're back in Berlin.
Okay, and this is where you began your trip as well?
Began and ended.
Began and ended in Berlin. Okay. What did you see there that was most impressive?
We got to visit the Berlin Wall, which was really cool.
I wondered if maybe you had...
And actually, right behind this gate is the spot where the Berlin Wall also stood. So we got to see that as well. And that was really amazing because we got to see a lot of the art that they've done on the remainder of the wall. And it was really amazing to see how they have transformed something that was so... that separated people into something that was that's beautiful and brings the community back together in one place. So that was amazing as well.
Okay, so do we have more? Is this the end of your trip?
One more.
One more? Or two?
So the tour agency, they do a big dinner for your last night, and we ate at Goffel House.
I think so.
And it was just a big feast, and it was a lot of fun. And the gentleman in the front in the blue vest, he was our tour guide, Christopher, and it was really fun to have him share the history of Lutheranism with us. He showed us mainly around Wittenberg, and then we went off to some other places on our own, but he was giving us, historical facts and a lot of information, and he, helped with the planning, and hopefully when we go back, we will get Christopher again.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously, the trip was of great educational value. I mean, I don't know if you studied about Luther beforehand or not, but you came back with a lot of firsthand knowledge and seeing the sites. And I kind of got the message here that there were moments at least that were meaningful to you from a faith perspective. Erin, so maybe you can just speak to that. I mean, did you come away feeling more affirmed in your faith, and particularly in Lutheranism, by being in these places?
Absolutely. It was amazing to be able to worship in a lot of the places that Luther worshipped, and just the worship in general was amazing to really feel more connected to the wider faith-based community, the wider faith community. And I thought that was really amazing that on the Sunday that we were there, we got to worship in the church in Wittenberg, and it was all in German. And so that was amazing to be able to just sit there and experience worship and it being so similar to what we see here in English worship. So that was really amazing to feel more connected to the wider community. Was really impactful for my faith.
Yeah, that's great. And I know, Stacey, you said something about reading where Luther read and sort of renewing your baptism and all, remembering it.
It was a very cool experience. I'm not one to read often, but the priest there I knew from 25 years ago when I was on the Lutheran Youth Board. He was an adult advisor, and he invited us to come to the prayer service and asked if I would read and asked if we had someone who would do the prayers. And it was just a really cool and humbling experience. One of the things that our tour guide had said the first day that we were in Wittenberg was that in Germany, there's 90% don't believe. And he said, we need another Martin Luther. And I think it's really cool because in our group I see so many people. You just have to believe and do one thing and it can change the world. And I think that we've got some great students who are on very great paths to changing the world.
Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned that 90% of people in Germany are not now part of the Christian church. And Europe overall has become a much more secular society than the United States, although in the U.S. we're also beginning to experience decline across the Christian world. And all virtually no denomination has been unaffected. Is this the case with the Lutheran tradition as well?
It is.
No.
It is.
But I think what you were saying is it is very inspiring because we've had a smaller community in LSA for the past couple of years. And this year, we've really had the opportunity to take off. We've probably doubled our attendance. And so that makes me really hopeful for the next generation maybe coming back to the church or feeling renewed in their faith while they're in college, which is not necessarily usual. So.
Yeah, well, just in case I didn't mention it early on, your campus ministry is based out of Grace Lutheran Church in Boone, right? And I'm just wondering if you have future plans to make another trip like this. Obviously, Erin's not going to be around. Well, I guess maybe you're doing graduate studies or something. Who knows?
Yeah, whatever I can do to get back to Germany, right?
I just wonder if you have future plans to take more trips like this with your students.
Yes. So historically, we have traveled internationally every 4 years, but not necessarily just to Germany. But I think this trip was so exciting, and to see the students really engage in the historical context and the funness of all of it. I think this was more of a learning opportunity for me. We were invited to go with University of Chapel Hill, and I've never planned an international trip before for the students. We've done everything in the Southeast, but, well, I guess we went to Washington State, so that's not true. But yes, I think we're going to go back. I'm hoping to take my freshmen from this year when they're seniors.
Oh, good.
We had 2 freshmen who went, and my hope is that we can get back there in 3 years while they're seniors and they can help lead this trip.
Well, thank you for giving our students this opportunity. Yeah. And Erin, I'm so happy that you were able to get an international experience before you graduated. So that's great. And thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's it for Religion and Life for this week. I hope you join us again next week on App TV as we continue to explore the relationship between religion, culture, and society. Until then, this is Ozzy Ostwald.